please give your attention to the short video. Jackie?
This meeting will be conducted as a Zoom webinar to allow for public participation and comments. The Contra Costa Transportation Authority does not condone hate speech in any form. We continually strive to make life better for all members of our community and create an atmosphere where everyone feels a sense of safety and belonging. We ask that anyone who wishes to speak does so with civility, respect, and kindness for others. Citizens will have 3 minutes to speak. It is requested that public speakers state their names and organizations, but providing such information is voluntary. Citizens participating in person wishing to speak should submit a public speaker card to the clerk. Citizens participating by Zoom wishing to speak should use the raise hand feature or dial *9 if participating via phone, and the chair or staff will call upon them at the appropriate time. Written public comments received in accordance with the teleconferencing special notice on the meeting agenda will be provided to the members. If authors of the written correspondence would like to speak, they should raise their hand in Zoom or submit a public speaker card, and the chair will call upon them at the appropriate time. All written correspondence received after that and during the meeting will be entered into the record. Thank you for participating in a meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority.
All right. Next, we'll conduct roll call. And actually, Jackie, if you don't mind, if you could add this to the roll call, when you call out the CBPAC members, can you also identify their organization? Just like I think, or if you know if that's possible.
I may not have that completely memorized
okay,
in front of me.
That's fine. If not, I don't want to make it too difficult, but because I'll admit too, I don't have it memorized either. So
I'm more than welcome to introduce the person, and then they can share with who they're representing.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, Member Byrne.
Present, and with the City of Walnut Creek.
Member Dugan.
Here, I'm with the East Bay Regional Park District.
Member Moriarty. Member Karimi.
Present. I'm represent the youth representative for the committee, but I also work with the Metropolitan Transportation Commission.
Member Keeshan. Member Olson.
I really don't know who I'm representing. It's one of two. It's either Transplant or the county. I apologize for this.
I believe it's Transplant.
Transplant. Okay, thank you.
Member Pinkham.
Hi, happy to be here. Not representing anybody, but I am on 5 bike ped committees, including BART's and a brand new one in my neighborhood. So it's great to be in person. It's just wonderful.
Member Riley.
Member Riley with WICTAC representing West County, and Bill, you are a representative of WICTAC in West County.
Member Riker.
I'm representing Transplan in East County.
Member Simmons.
Hi, I'm representing TransPAC, Walnut Creek to Martinez.
Vice Chair Weeks.
I'm representing SWAT.
And Chair Sarmiento.
Hi, representing the county.
Thank you. Looks like we have all members present except for Member Keeshan.
Okay, so we'll move on to the next item, item 2, which is public comment. First, Jackie, have we received any public comment?
We have not received any written public comment.
Okay.
However, I do have a hand raised.
Okay, I didn't see who's raised hand from. Is it a raised hand on Zoom?
Yes, I'm gonna let them in right now.
Okay.
Hi, this is Bill Keeshan. I couldn't figure out how to talk here.
Oh,
Can you hear?
Thank you, Bill.
Member Keeshan, I guess representing SWAT, Danville area.
Great, thank you.
All right. Is there any members of the public in the audience here who would like to speak on an item that's not on part of the agenda? If so, please submit a public speaker card or raise your hand and staff or I will call upon you. Okay, I don't see any members of the public raising their hand. So I think that concludes our public comment item. So the next item on the agenda is item 3, which is the election of the chair and vice chair for the remainder of the 2024 CBPAC meetings. And I'll turn it to the committee members here if they have any nominations.
Are there any rules about terms, term limits, anything like that?
There's no term limits.
Okay. I'll nominate Robert for chair.
Okay, any other comments?
I'll second that nomination for the remainder of the year.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, and I'll keep in mind as well, it's election of chair and vice chair, so if anyone has any nominations for the vice chair.
Question. It seems like Chris Weeks has just been nominated for vice chair. I'm not sure we've had very many meetings since, so I would vote to nominate Chris again.
Okay.
I second the nomination for Chris Weeks.
Okay. And I guess with that, Jackie, do we have to do I guess we have to do a first and a second. Oh, and I guess it's 2 separate motions, correct?
Yes, that would be 2 separate motions. The first motion would be was a first from Member Riley and a second from Dugan for remaining as chair of 2024 for Sarmiento.
Okay.
So we'll do the roll call right now for that one. Member Byrne,
Yes.
Member Dugan,
Yes.
Member Moriarty,
Yes.
Member Karimi,
Yes.
Member Keeshan,
Yes.
Member Olson,
Yes.
Member Pinkham,
Yes.
Member Riley,
Yes.
Member Riker,
Yes.
Member Simmons,
Yes.
Vice Chair Weeks,
Yes.
and Chair Sarmiento.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes unanimously. And I will do the second roll call, another roll call for having Vice Chair Weeks remain as Vice Chair for 2024. It was a first by Dugan and a second by Riker. I will do the roll call one more time. Member Byrne,
Yes.
Member Dugan,
Yes.
Member Karimi,
Yes.
Member Keeshan,
Yes.
Member Olson,
Yes.
Member Pinkham,
Yes.
Member Riley,
Yes.
Member Riker,
Yes.
Member Simmons,
Yes.
Vice Chair Weeks,
Yes.
Chair Sarmiento. Okay, motion passes unanimously.
Okay, thank you. So the next item on the agenda is a consent calendar, which includes a summary of actions from the September 25th, 2023 meeting. For the committee members, if any changes or comments, please raise your hand or speak up. All right, seeing none, Jackie, have we received any public comment on this item?
No public comment received.
Okay, I think what actually we'll need is a motion and a second, correct?
Correct, thank you.
Okay, if I get a motion and a second from the committee members on this item, please. All right, first by committee member Pinkham,
Second?
and second by committee member Byrne. All right, Jackie, if you could take a roll call, please.
Member Byrne,
Yes.
Member Dugan,
Yes.
Member Moriarty,
Abstain?
Member Karimi,
Yes.
Member Keeshan,
Yes.
Member Olson,
Yes.
Member Pinkham,
Yes.
Member Riley,
Yes.
Member Riker,
Yes.
Member Simmons,
Yes.
Vice Chair Weeks,
Yes.
Chair Sarmiento.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes unanimously with Member Moriarty abstaining.
Okay, Thank you. So next we'll move on to regular agenda items. And item 5A on the regular agenda is an update on the draft comprehensive multimodal corridor plan for Interstate 680. And this will be presented by both CCTA staff and Caltrans staff. So if I call Matt and John just to make this presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair Sarmiento, and congratulations. Let's get myself on the camera here. Thank you, Jackie. Congratulations on being chair again. Matt Kelly, Senior Transportation Planner with the Authority. I'm here to introduce this item. It's the I-680 Comprehensive Multimodal Corridor Plan. This is a Caltrans managed study that is done in cooperation with the locals, in this case, Contra Costa Transportation Authority, and a variety of kind of stakeholder committees, including you guys. We last brought this item to you in June of last year to tell you about the I-680 study we're working on. And now we're back. We received your feedback then, and now we're back here today, and we have a draft report to share with you. But I'm going to turn it over to John Xu from Caltrans, District 4 in Oakland. He's going to walk you through what is a CMCP, why are we doing one for I-680, and why is it of interest to a countywide bicycle and pedestrian advisory committee. I think John will answer all those questions and probably more as he walks you through the CMCP. So I'm going to turn it over to John.
Thanks, Matt. Let me share my screen very quickly. Hope you can all see my screen okay. Good morning. My name is John Xu. I'm with Caltrans District 4 System Planning. I'm the lead for Contra Costa I-680 Comprehensive Multimodal Corridor Plan, or CMCP. As Matt mentioned, we introduced the CMCP to this group last summer, and I'm glad to report we recently have completed a draft CMCP. So today I'm going to share some of the key elements of the draft CMCP. Before I do that, let me quickly go over some of the CMCP basics. So what is a CMCP? The CMCP aims to do two things. First, to comprehensively identify multimodal corridor needs, and second, to recommend projects through a collaborative process to address those needs. The CMCP is a corridor plan, not a project. It's not a programming document either. So why are we doing a CMCP for this corridor? The reason is twofold. First, Caltrans is required by law to do a long-range planning. And second, the CMCP will qualify projects for future funding opportunities, such as SB1 Solutions for Congested Corridors Program, or SCCP. As you all know, we're trying to nominate the northbound express lane completion project to SCCP. So we need to complete the CMCP to support that funding application. So here's a quick overview of the corridor. The CMCP covers the entire I-680 in Contra Costa County, but we're not just looking at freeway mainline and the ramps. We're also including local arterials, rail and transit services, bike and pedestrian facilities, park and ride lots, and shared mobility hubs. In terms of the CMCP development schedule, as I mentioned, we recently completed the draft CMCP. We are currently conducting internal and external reviews to give our stakeholders an opportunity to provide input. We're aiming the end of the fiscal year to have the CMCP finalized and approved. The CMCP is being led by these 7 CMCP goals. I won't read them, but would just note that these are also the goals for the Innovate 680 program. And just a quick sidebar there, for those of you who don't know, the Innovate 680 program is really a package of multimodal corridor projects to help improve the travel experience along the I-680 corridor. So we also use these corridor goals to help evaluate the projects being recommended by the CMCP. So in today's presentation, I wanted to share two main things. First, the stakeholder and public engagement, and second, the final project list. So starting with the stakeholder engagement, here on this screen, you will see the main stakeholder engagement platforms we have been using. The Innovate 680 program has a technical advisory committee and a concept of operations working group, also known as the Tech ConOps working group. And this is the main stakeholder engagement platform we have been using. The Innovate 680 program also includes a policy advisory committee, or the PAC. And we have been keeping the PAC updated on the CMCP development. We're also coordinating with several CCTA committees on the document development, including the Paratransit Coordinating Council, the Citizens Advisory Committee, as well as this group, the Countywide Bike and Ped Advisory Committee. Here is the key feedback we received from our stakeholders. Many stakeholders emphasized safety, especially bike and ped safety, is a top priority. Several cities complained that because the freeway is often congested during peak periods, and there is generally a lack of high quality transit, traffic often spills onto local arterials, which is a concern. Bus priority projects and the first mile and last mile connection improvements have also been suggested to us. And then there's a need to develop low stress bike facilities on arterials, in addition to the bike path along the corridor, such as the Iron Horse Trail. Last but not least, charging infrastructure is suggested for electric vehicles as well as for e-bikes. Moving on to public engagement. As you all know, CCTA conducted a series of public engagement events last summer, known as the Summer Event Series. And 6 of those events occurred along the 680 corridor. Of these 6 events, the Caltrans CMCP team attended 3 of them, which included the City Center Farmers Market in San Ramon on July 29th, the Music and Market event in Concord on August 10th, and the Farmers Market in Martinez on August 27th. Here is the key public feedback we received. Excuse me. Many event attendees commented on we need more frequent and more reliable transit service within the corridor. Several people commented on the need to improve the Iron Horse Trail, especially at crossing locations. Bike parking at transit stations was also suggested. And then at the Martinez event, several folks commented on the need to improve the I-680 State Route 4 interchange. And then at the San Ramon event, there were a few complaints about the pavement conditions between San Ramon and the I-580. On that last point, by the way, we shared this concern with our maintenance group, and they're actually working to develop a project to address the concern. So in response to the input received, as well as to address the needs that we identified through our technical analysis, we have developed a final project list. The project list is broken down to several categories. So for highway projects, we have the Northbound Express Lane completion project, a couple of aux lane projects, as well as the 684 interchange project. There are also technology projects such as the corridor adaptive ramp metering and coordinated adaptive traffic signals. Some transit project examples include the new I-680 express bus service, as well as bus on shoulder project. We have also included projects from our transit agencies, such as the BART station modernization project and the county connection expansion project. There's also a planned project to do landside improvement to support future ferry service in Martinez. And we also have a long list of bike and ped projects, which I will go over later in this presentation. CCTA has identified several transit stations and/or park and ride lots to be upgraded to become shared mobility hubs. And that's actually part of the Innovate 680 program as well. Then there are EV charging stations being proposed or planned by local jurisdictions along the 680 corridor. Last but not least, the CMCP is recommending a couple of studies. There's a transit study as well as a climate change adaptation study to address sea level rise at the 680 Marina Vista interchange location. So here's a map showing all the CMCP projects. I know this is a busy map because we have quite a few projects along the corridor. So let me try to highlight a few of them for you. So you probably see a yellow line along the 680 main line. That represents the technology project I mentioned earlier. And then next to the yellow line, there's an orange line representing the new express bus service between Martinez and the new Tri-Valley hub. Then next to that, there's a green line for the northern half of the corridor. That is the northbound express lane completion project. Then you probably see a blue dot at the 680 State Route 4 interchange location, representing the interchange improvement project. Moving further down south, you will see some purple lines, and those are the aux lane projects. There are quite a few green dots and green boxes along the corridor. Those are the shared mobility hub locations that CCTA has identified. Lastly, those those red balloons represent the proposed charging stations. So moving on to the bike and ped projects, we actually developed a CMCP bike and ped network. I believe that was in response to one of the comments received from this group. So we are envisioning a network of bike and ped facilities providing connectivity to transit and other destinations, and also provide a contiguous route for bicyclists to traverse the 680 corridor from end to end. So for this network, we're including both existing facilities as well as planned projects with a focus on freeway crossings as well as parallel facilities. The data sources we used include the District 4 bike and ped plans, as well as CCTA's countywide bicycle and pedestrian plan. So overall, the network includes over 50 crossing opportunities, as well as almost 100 segments of parallel facilities. So we put this web map, this network on a web map, and the link to this web map is included in the draft CMCP. Finally, I want to emphasize that the CMCP network connects to other local facilities and is really part of a larger countywide bike and ped network. So in terms of the CMCP next steps, I mentioned that we are trying to do documentary review of the draft final CMCP. And we're also conducting the final round of stakeholder engagement, including this meeting here today. Once those are completed, we will get the document approved and remediated for ADA compliance. So before I close, I just want to take this opportunity to thank this group for your guidance and assistance. Your input has made the CMCP a more robust document. So that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions.
All right. Thank you, John. Thank you, Matt, for that presentation. And I'll turn it first to the committee members. If there are any questions, please raise your hand or speak up. Committee member Pinkham?
What sort of timeline are we talking about here? I know you can't completely estimate it out because the plan hasn't have approval, but if you give me an educated guess, of course, the other other questionable thing about that is funding. And have you looked at sources for that?
Yeah, good question. So for the timeline, I went over the timeline for the document itself. We're trying to get it finalized by the end of the fiscal year, so end of June. But then in terms of the analysis that's going into the CMCP, we are relying on some of the existing studies. So for most of the studies, they're assuming a 20-year planning horizon. And then moving on to the implementation side of things, the CMCP actually includes a discussion of potential funding opportunities. So as you know, currently there are a lot of different funding opportunities out there, both at the state level and the federal level. So we try to cast a pretty wide net to capture those different funding opportunities, because our vision is really to achieve the corridor goals. We really need that complete package of projects that I just went through. And each of those projects may have its unique advantage in applying for different funding opportunities. So we're including those different opportunities in the CMCP. And I should also mention, we are not only the agency, we're not the only agency to help implement the plan. It's really a collaborative effort between Caltrans, CCTA, and all the local jurisdictions along the route. So each agency can take this plan as the overarching vision for the corridor, and then go after these different funding programs out there to get their project developed. So hope that answers your question.
Yeah, one other aspect of that is you mentioned Caltrans, and of course, Caltrans is not very bike friendly. It is not that, they don't have a history of that. Hopefully this time you can work on getting some funding from them as opposed to cars.
Right. Yeah. On that note, I should add that Caltrans is changing. So we have our new strategic plan, our new goals, and also there's the statewide plan called the Climate Action Plan for Transportation Infrastructure, or CAPTI. So which really aligns our effort with our climate goals. That includes more robust investment in multimodal improvements such as transit and active transportation. So yeah, the ship is turning, albeit a little bit slow, but we are getting there.
All right. Any other committee comments? I'll go first with, committee member Karimi, then Dugan after.
Thank you. Appreciate you taking today's time to give this presentation. And in your earlier response to the question, you mentioned that there are several parties working on this project. This isn't Caltrans. Is BART working on this? And the reason I bring up BART specifically is because I noticed a few weeks ago they were the recipient of a $2 million SMART grant related to GTFS pathways, which I think would significantly benefit individuals that have disabilities that would take advantage of this type of data. Is this part of that, or are you going to be collaborating with BART on that? And also, in addition to that, one recipient, there was also CTDA as well that received $1 million to receive towards GTPS data for paratransit use, I believe?
Yeah, a couple of things on that. First, the CMCP is really focused on future needs. So if an agency already received funding to implement some of the projects, then we're not really including those projects in our CMCP. And second, I mentioned the Innovate 680 Tech ConOps Working Group is our main stakeholder engagement platform. And BART actually is sitting on the Innovate 680 Tech ConOps Working Group. So we have been working very closely with them on identifying corridor needs as well as projects to address those needs.
Thank you.
All right, Committee Member Dugan.
Hi, John. Can you hear me? Yeah. Thanks for this. I have two questions. There's a map that you showed about 2 slides ago that had class 1/2, or class 2/3, in the legend. But there was one item in the legend that just said bike ped, and it was the blue lines. I'm wondering what the difference is. That a category on its own, or is that or is that like an umbrella category? I just was wondering what the difference was in the legend.
Yeah, because as I mentioned, the network projects or segments came from a variety of sources. So it really depends on how a project is phrased in one of those source documents. Sometimes you will specifically say it's a class 2 or it's a class 3, but sometimes it's more generic. Like we will look at its location, we know there's a need, but the potential solution could be a class 2 or a class 3. So that's why you see different combinations of facility types within those in the network. I have to double check on the backpad one though, because I would think those would be class 1, unless the specific need at those specific locations was more like we need some sort of bike and ped improvements without identifying the specific bike classification. So I can double check on that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks. I mean, I think one of the things that other members have already sort of alluded to is that the idea is that this corridor plan, I'm glad to hear that you're working with other jurisdictions because, for instance, the Iron Horse Trail crossing comment that you received and the improvements to those, obviously Caltrans does not have any ownership or management of those areas, right? So I'm hoping, do you feel that this plan sets local jurisdictions up to be more competitive for grant funding or get support from Caltrans to make those improvements that do make this corridor work as a whole?
Yeah, the short answer to that would be a yes. Because I mentioned we definitely want to be more multimodal, and that's the direction we're going. And in terms of the competitiveness for projects, just from my experience, because in addition to corridor planning, I also do a lot of project funding application nomination work. So just from my point of view, more increasingly, we need to tell a story how a project fits into a larger corridor vision for it to be more competitive. So from that perspective, I definitely think having a CMCP in place would help make these projects, even though they're local projects, will help make those projects more competitive.
Thanks, John. That's it.
Committee Member Riley.
Thank you for the presentation. I was just wondering, I guess with the other projects, but I was particularly wondering about the EV charging stations. Are those projects that are within Caltrans right of way, or are those partnerships with the other jurisdictions and
Yeah, in most cases, they're not. So for this exercise, we actually reached out to each of the local jurisdictions along the 680 corridor. And many of them already have plans or proposals to implement charging stations near I-680. So we basically just took their proposals and added to the CMCP. Yeah, so most of them are outside the state right of way.
All right, Committee Member or Vice Chair Weeks.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I have kind of a four-part question, so I'll pause at each section and get your input or just acknowledgement and then keep moving on. If I'm ranting
Sure.
too long, just wave your hands in the air like you're drowning, and then I can stop and let someone else talk.
I'll try my best.
So first question, I wanted to acknowledge that there's some reference to bike parking at transit stations as being one of the priorities of going through this process. And I didn't see many references to more detail on what that meant. And as being a bicycle pedestrian committee and being interested in bike parking, I'd like to see if there's any way you could acknowledge the difference between different types of bike parking and the quality of those. You know, like a bike station versus e-lockers versus just racks. As you know, there's the safety of each one of these for bike users is definitely paramount when choosing whether to use them. So it's going to have an impact on how useful these facilities are. And I was also curious why it just says transit stations and not something like regional destinations or something like that, where people are doing something other than commuting. When people are going to regional shopping malls or things like that, so people can lead a life that's on a bicycle if they could make that choice. So I'd love to see something like that. If there's some, I'd love to hear more about whether there was discussions about the idea of like what we have over here at the Pleasant Hill BART, the bike station. Those have been shown to be pretty darn popular and pretty darn secure. And so, yeah, here's your chance. Is there something that you want to say about that? Or
Excuse me. Yeah, sure. So on the bike parking at the transit stations, I think first that was one of the comments we received directly from the public. So in that particular context, there was no mention of bike parking at regional destinations. But I do agree with you. That's a very good point, because by providing secure and convenient parking for bikers, we are promoting more bicycle use. Second part to that is that I mentioned that the BART has plans to do station modernization improvement as well as bike and ped access improvements. So I'm pretty sure they have planned to incorporate more bike parking improvements as part of those station area improvements. But going back to the regional destinations, and actually the all bike parking related discussion, this is a little bit challenging for us because those parking would typically be outside of our right of way. So we don't have direct jurisdiction over the decision. So that being said, we will continue to work with our corridor stakeholders to implement bike parking where needed to support more bike usage.
thank you for that response. And just to build on your response there, you know, one example would be, you know, Bay Area park and ride lots. And I noticed that in this report, there is some mention of the Bollinger Park and Ride, which is within SWAT and San Ramon, and there's no e-lockers there. So there has been requests for that. I think that if you had them there, they would be used. There's a lot of buses that serve that particular lot that go to corporate campuses throughout the Bay Area, and a lot of those people are avid cyclists. That's why they live in this area. So it'd be great to have some high quality bike parking in that location that could keep a bike safe all day. I think with the advent of Lowe's and Home Depot and all of the tools that they offer to bike thieves to easily cut through bike locks and racks, I think that most people who want to have a bike when they return to where they took their bus trip want to put them in a locker or something a little more secure. So that's that first question. Next question. I was looking at the TDM section, starting page 61, and I think that we maybe just go through that one more time, make sure someone proofs it. There's some things in here that aren't up to date. For example, the merge carpool system is now going bye-bye, for lack of a better word, and I think we need to come up with a way to match people. Members of that list were just sent an email that said, merge is going away, use your local carpool matching tool. And Contra Costa and our area does not have our own local matching tool. So there's a loose end there. And in the list of transportation demand management programs you have there, you have carpool van incentives. And that's not a category. I don't think we have really carpool incentives. We have van pool incentives. And you might note in the table 4.40, that van pooling is one of the top 2 performing VMT reduction programs that we have. So maybe a little bit of love for van pooling and the traffics program, which also shows here as being very effective and could be a great place to make an investment if you want to mitigate the impacts of freeway traffic or freeway expansions. I think traffics would love to have some acknowledgement there. So yeah, take a look at that. There's also not, the Summer Bike Challenge isn't listed as one of the programs. There's very little in here about the bike work that 511 Contra Costa has done. So take a look at that and see if you could give them some credit there where credit's due, because the Summer Bike Challenge is coming up, and it'd be great if you guys take part in it, take a look at it, and visit one of our stations. And then
Sounds good. Great feedback.
Thank you. Yeah, and then looking at the bike web map, just because I'm from San Ramon, that map on page, I think it's page 61, the ESRI logo is covering the entire city of San Ramon, and you can't see anything going on in San Ramon. So if you could just take that logo away and make it so that we can see what's going on in that map, and make sure that you guys have taken a look at our bike master plan and included the projects related to that, because we're very concerned about the intersection of Bollinger Canyon and Highway 680. We have a continuous green on that overcrossing, and it's going to be difficult to mitigate the impact of the coordinated adaptive ramp metering on that area. And we just want to make sure you guys have that on your radar and start thinking about how we're going to get bikes across that very tough intersection. And I know we're hoping on getting a very modern and interesting transit center located inside the Bishop Branch footprint, maybe at Bishop Branch 3. Maybe that will reduce the number of bikes needing to get over to the Bollinger Park and Ride, but we still have some work that needs to be done on looking at that interchange and maybe look at the impacts of the Innovate 680 programs on that.
Sure.
So those are my multifaceted questions. Hopefully you have a chance to look over that TDM section again and clean that up. It would be great and give us another chance to make sure it's all right. Thank you.
Yeah, great feedback. Thanks for that.
All right. Any other committee member comments or questions for John? All right, Committee Member Olson.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Sarmiento. Great report. Thank you. It's important to have projects listed on plans because they have to be there before we can build them. So you did a great job listing bunches of projects, and thank you. Second point, Class 3 looks fine on paper. However, bicyclists hate Class 3. Class 3 is an invitation to strap a piece of styrofoam on your head and go out and fight with cars. No good. I would like to see in your document that if there are more than 2 traffic lanes on the road, that you eliminate one of the excess traffic lanes, and instead of calling it Class 3, you put in Class 2 or Class 4. There will be a pause now while you take notes. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you.
Yeah, okay. My third point of request is all the interchanges and all the road crossings of Interstate 680 have traffic signals. I'm going out on a limb now about all, but I'm pretty sure all do. And traffic signals have crosswalks. Those of us who walk would love to see crosswalks in all 4 quadrants of every traffic signal. It's a real hassle to keep walking on the same side of the street, but to have to use 3 push beg buttons, cross the main street, cross the side street, cross the main street again to continue walking in the same direction. So if you've got a traffic signal, we would certainly appreciate crosswalks in all 4 quadrants. And thank you very much. This is a great document. I'm speaking now only for myself, but I love all the listing of all the projects that we can look forward to someday. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments for John?
Chair Sarmiento, I believe Member Keeshan online would like to make a comment.
Okay, can you remember Keeshan, if you have a comment or question for John?
Yes, please. I think you touched on, somebody asked the question about the Iron Horse Trail and some of the things that were going on there. I'd just love to maybe drill down into that a little bit. What efforts are being done? You know, my sense is this is kind of like a multi-headed hydra, just because there's so many jurisdictions and it kind of overlaps into these different areas. And maybe this is just me being a business person and coming from the business world. What efforts are being made to make sure that there's coordination among all the constituencies on the Iron Horse Trail to coordinate efforts and really present, I don't know, a cohesive front there? I mean, my concern is that you know, that just seems to be a more effective way to do this, and I just would love to hear what you are doing along those lines to make sure that communication is maximized between those different groups.
Yeah, to that question, I'm gonna be honest with you, because the Iron Horse Trail is not within our right of way. So Caltrans as a state agency, we usually do not play a lead role. Instead, we will just be a partner and provide our support, especially with the understanding that improving the Iron Horse Trail will benefit the freeway. So we can provide our support in terms of, for example, when there's a funding application for an improvement project along the Iron Horse Trail, we can review the project and provide our support, maybe in the form of a support letter, if that's the request from the lead agency sponsoring the project. But I may have to pound this to Matt on this one, because I think CCTA is in the central role coordinating with different agencies along the corridor, along Iron Horse Trail as well.
Too many buttons. So in terms of the Iron Horse Trail, I believe the county is kind of the primary coordinator of activities and actual planning for the corridor. CCTA definitely coordinates bike planning within the county, but the corridor, the Iron Horse Corridor itself, is a county-owned or operated facility.
And just to follow up with Matt, yeah, I'd like to confirm, yeah, that the county, we do have a like a standing Iron Horse corridor committee, and and then that's of course where we take discuss any issues of coordination, things like that. So community member Keeshan, yeah, I can provide you more information on that committee if you.
That'd be great. I appreciate it, because I'd love to be involved in that, because it's a near and dear to my heart.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments before I? Okay, go ahead, community member Byrne.
Yeah, thank you for this. I do just have kind of a follow-up question about the project map and then the EV charging stations. I think you had mentioned that these were locations that agencies had already identified. Was there maybe an effort to look at it systemically to see if there were any gaps and then pursue that with the local agencies?
That's a very good point, because as you probably know, the FHWA has this alternative fuel corridor designation, and I believe 680 has received that designation. So with that designation, it comes with the eligibility for a couple of federal programs to implement EV charging stations within the corridor. So that's a good thing. But that's definitely a good suggestion on the kind of coordination we need to implement EV charging station. I will say, though, again, these EV charging stations are really not within our right-of-way. So again, as Caltrans, we will have to play a more supportive role. But we do see the value in implementing more, I guess, more seamless network of EV charging stations along the corridor to support the EV adoption. So thanks for that.
And I can just add that, CCTA has prepared a EV blueprint for the county, and we have done some identification of locations that do need, or, where there's a demand for those types of facilities. So there, we would coordinate that kind of between our local agencies and the recommendations from the EV blueprint to fine-tune where they actually go on the ground.
Committee Member Weeks?
Just a couple more things. Thanks for your patience. One, I was curious if there's any chance you could put in something here to help with our ongoing discussions about bicycle access on bridges. Just specifically, I was thinking about, I lived in San Francisco for many years and took advantage of the Caltrans shuttle that would go take me across the first section of the Bay Bridge. And that was a really lifesaver for me if I wanted to go out to Treasure Island, or if I wanted to bike into Oakland. This was before the other bridge was built. And that was a really great mitigation that Caltrans provided for the bike community. And I think we're running into similar problems on other bridges where the debate is ongoing about bicycle access. And I think maintaining bicycle access in some way would be great. So if there's, maybe a historical discussion of how Caltrans has been involved in those discussions, that might be helpful in the planning process. And thank you. So that's my main comment in this section, but I did want to mention for Bill Keeshan that the committee is called, that he was asking about, is called the Iron Horse Corridor Management Program Advisory Committee. And I'll say that one more time because I know he's taking notes. Iron Horse Corridor Management Program Advisory Committee. And the discussions are taking place at that committee now to address the new 7th component of their work plan, which includes mobility on the Iron Horse Trail, and that's regional mobility for people using it for things such as commuting for longer distances. So he may want to touch base with me or check out the stuff online about it. Thank you.
All right. Any other final questions or comments for John before I turn it off to public comment? Okay, seeing that, actually, John, I do have one quick question. I'm just curious,
Sure.
How often does a CMCP get updated?
We don't have a set schedule on that, but it's just in general, we try to update the plan every 4 or 5 years. But it really depends. So for example, the policy goals may shift, or the traffic conditions along a particular corridor may change. So those would be some of the trigger points when we update the CMCP. But in general, I would say 4 or 5, 6 years.
Okay, thank you, John. All right, I will turn it over to public comment. And first, Jackie, I just want to check if we received any written public comment on this.
No written public comment, but we do have a public comment virtually. Looks like the name is Danny Lanus.
Okay.
Just one moment, and I'm going to promote them.
Thank you.
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. This is Danny Lanis, Advocacy Manager at Bike Pay. Thank you so much, John, for the presentation. As part of the regional Measure 3 bridge toll increase planning, Contra Costa committed to doing a bike walk pathway study for the 680 Highway 4 interchange. It looks like there are a lot of items related to the interchange in the corridor plan, with a lot of money being spent. But we don't see anything in the plan yet about bike walk access through that interchange. Would like to ask for updates on the study that Contra Costa committed to doing and what the timeline on that looks like. Another question is how Contra Costa Transportation Authority plans to measure and mitigate VMT increases associated with the HOV lanes in the plan, and how much will it cost? As a reminder, Caltrans considers HOV lanes the same as general purpose lanes for the purpose of calculating VMT impacts. The plan focuses a lot on programs for VMT mitigation, but without a lot more investment in bike walk transit infrastructure, those investments are not going to go nearly as far. If CCTA was able to expedite and prioritize the rest of the mobility hubs, conversion of park and ride lots to bike, walk, transit hubs, now listed as medium-term projects with a total cost around 110 million, and bus facilities, it seems like they would be a lot better off. Many of the other bike walk projects in the plan are just listed as TBD with no date or cost estimates yet. Of all the recommended projects listed in Table 5.1 and all the active transportation projects listed in Table 5.2, there isn't a single Class 4 protected bikeway proposed. Many of the proposed Class 2 or Class 3 bikeway facilities listed on pages 105 through 120 are very insufficient to meet a low stress and all ages and abilities standard. Many do not meet either NACTO bikeway guidelines for bikeway facilities based on corridor speed limits and vehicle counts, nor do many of them meet Caltrans's new complete streets guidance per their Design Information Bulletin 94, published in January. We'd like to recommend taking another look at this plan and update the individual bikeway facility recommendations in light of current design guidance. Caltrans will also be releasing freeway interchange bike walk crossing design guidance later this spring and summer, as the CTA should update this 680 plan in reflection of the Caltrans update as well. Sorry, that's a lot. If there is a opportunity, we could try setting up a separate meeting with staff to try to get into some of these details. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that comment. I don't know, John, if you have any response to that or.
I can speak to the 684 interchange a little bit, but I think, Matt, you probably want to speak to that project instead, as well as the mitigation measures.
Yeah, throw it to me when you're done, John.
Well, I mean, in the plan, we are including the 684 interchange project, but also I believe there's a proposal to build a connector between the Canal Trail and the Iron Horse Trail. And that connector will go through the interchange area. So I think that's probably the commitment that CCTA has made to improve the bike path access in that area. And then regarding the mitigation measure, excuse me, mitigation measures for the express lane project, I think CCTA has put together a program or a package of mitigation measures. Maybe Matt, you can talk about the package there. Yeah, that's all I had to say on that.
Yeah, thanks, John. Yeah, so on the former item, CCTA is developing a project that would allow bike and pedestrian passage through the 684 interchange, connecting those two kind of north-south trails, Iron Horse and Canal Trail. So, and then regarding the I-680 northbound express lane, I could talk about this for an hour, but I'll try and give you the minute version. Starting about 2 to 3 years ago, we started as an agency analyzing the VMT, vehicle miles traveled, that would be induced by the addition of an express lane through the current gap. Right now, the current express lane ends south of Walnut Creek at about Livorno Road. There's no managed lane through the Highway 24 interchange, and then an HOV lane starts again at Highway 242. The project itself would convert that northern section to an express lane and build a new express lane between Livorno and SR 242. So that addition of the new lane through the 24 interchange is the part of the project that would induce demand on the corridor and according to the way we are supposed to calculate VMT from the state. So, and actually, when we started, there was no way of calculating express lanes. We had to come up with our own methodology for that using the state's calculator and benchmarking it with our travel demand forecasting model. So we were able to come up with an estimate of the amount of VMT to be induced by the new lane, and then following that, we came up with a proposal to mitigate all of every VMT generated by the various alternatives. We are looking at about 4 alternatives for that project. So we looked at dozens of different strategies for mitigating that VMT. We looked at everything from building affordable housing to funding, a BART extension in West County. However, the package of projects and strategies we came up with focuses on implementing those shared mobility hubs in the corridor, which, focus on providing mobility options for especially active transportation users and transit users, and getting them around the corridor, getting them to BART, getting them to various, from, that first and last mile from their home or to their work or whatever the destination is. We also would be funding a new express bus service between that John actually referred to in his presentation, that would go between Martinez Amtrak and the Tri-Valley Integrated Transit Hub, which is where the Valley Rail would come in and connect with BART. And we're also proposing TDM expansion of our current TDM activities in the corridor, including things like, free transit passes, e-bike rebate programs, and a whole lot of other proven TDM activities. So our proposal does mitigate the entire VMT added by the project, and the cost of those mitigations are on par with the actual cost of the project, ranging between about $200 and $300 million for the mitigation. So I know that took more than a minute, but that kind of provides a summary of the VMT mitigation activities as part of the 680 Express Lane project. And I don't remember if there were any other questions for CCTA as part of that, but I think we covered everything, John.
All right, thank you, John. Thank you, Matt, for the response. Finally, because I don't think I've mentioned this or asked this yet, Jackie, I don't know if we have any public comment from anyone in the room here.
No, no written public comment received, and I don't believe so.
Okay. All right. So, John, Matt, thank you for that presentation on the I-680 CMCP, and we'll
Thank you
move.
for having me.
All right. Thank you. So next we'll move on to item 5B, which is an update on the Contra Costa community-based transportation plans development process, and this item will be presented by both Colin and Matt. So, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Matt Kelly again here. I'll cover the presentation, and then Colin and I will be available for any questions. This is about the community-based transportation plan or updates to those existing plans. Get us to the next slide here. So what is a CBTP? Well, CBTPs aim to bring together local residents, community-based organizations, and transportation agencies like CCTA to identify and improve mobility option for low-income communities. So really, these are supposed to be community-led plans that are focusing on identifying the transportation challenges that are most affecting these populations, and develop and prioritize strategies to overcome those challenges. So the findings help the funding and implementing organizations make decisions on planning and funding and implementation, and really prioritizing that implementation. These plans are funded by OBAG, the One Bay Area grants associated with MTC and Plan Bay Area 2050, and then REAP 2.0. REAP is regional, oh gosh, I already forgot this. Regional, I think, express action, it's not express, but it's basically speeding up implementation of local.
Early action.
Early action, that's it, thank you, Colin. I knew it, early express, one of those. Anyway, that hadn't been part of the CBTP process before. In the past, CBTP recommendations were funded by the Lifeline Transportation Program, which you may have heard of. REAP is now replacing the Lifeline program. So there's some new nomenclature here if you've worked on CBTPs before. And one of them is where we actually do the CBTPs. So as I mentioned, you know, it's really to go into these low-income communities, but really communities that have been historically underserved and marginalized over the years. So that includes people with low incomes, but also communities of color and residents of these areas identified as equity priority communities. In the past, in previous RTPs, those were referred to as communities of concern. Now they're equity priority communities. So really, MTC takes a whole lot of demographic information and looks at census tracts and their makeup and determines which areas qualify as EPCs. And then the goals are to go into these locations, engage the residents and community-based organizations, and using those community-based organizations to analyze and shape analyze the issues and shape recommendations for these areas. So just so you can have an idea of where our locations are. So you can't really see the green because it's in the background, but that was the old communities of concern. But then the pink shading is where we actually did the last round of CBTPs in those communities of concern. So the pink area are also green. You just can't see the green. Sorry, I'm probably confusing you. And then the orange are the new EPCs. So basically, they are almost all in the same locations, but there are a few new locations, and I'll point those out in a couple of slides. So existing CBTPs in Contra Costa include Bay Point area, which we first did in 2007. We updated that plan in 2021 and expanded it to include most of Pittsburgh and parts of Antioch. There's the Concord Monument Corridor that we first prepared a plan for in 2006. We updated that in 2020 and kept the same geography. Downtown Martinez, same thing. We did that in 2009, updated it in 2020, and kept the same geography. The Richmond area, which we first updated or prepared in 2004, updated in 2021 and greatly expanded it to include parts of El Cerrito, San Pablo, and parts of unincorporated Contra Costa County like Terra Hills and Montalvan Manor. And so now we're on a new cycle, as I mentioned, generated by Plan Bay Area, the latest RTP adopted in 2021. So this time around, there's $3 million for the 9 counties, and that's allocated by each county's share of the low-income population, which is defined as being less than 200% of the federal poverty level. And as I mentioned earlier, it's defined by those the EPC framework to define the geography, which I just showed you. So our allocation here in Contra Costa County is $450,000. That's 15% of the region's share, and I believe we have about 16% of the region's share of the EPCs, and 19% of our county is actually in EPCs. We have a 10% local match. In-kind staff time is allowed as the match, and we must complete our new CBTPs by 2026. There's a use it or lose it caveat. And priority for which CBTPs we update or prepare this time around should be given to newly identified areas as part of that EPC framework, and or plans that have not been updated in more than 5 years. So just to focus in on those newly identified locations, that orange shading on the right side of your map, basically the Rodeo kind of western Crockett area is new. You can see down in the lower left, that was those are the areas we did in 2021. Kind of that's the northern Richmond area, which spread into unincorporated Contra Costa County. And then similar idea here, the East Antioch Oakley area is new, and on the left you can see where we updated the kind of Bay Point, Pittsburgh, Antioch area in 2021. And so our discussion today, and I'll just mention, we also took this same discussion to our technical coordinating committee last Thursday. So we've got a few questions here for you. I'll go through the questions and give you kind of some feedback that we heard from the TCC, and then let you guys comment as you feel needed on these. This is going to help us put together our work plan that we'll be taking to our planning committee and board for their approval. So our main questions that we want to ask today and get your feedback on are the locations of the CBTPs. Do we focus on developing plans for those newly identified areas that I just showed you, or are there compelling reasons to really just update all the areas, the ones we did last time, and include the new areas as well? And one of those compelling reasons, and I didn't mention this earlier, is that the previous plans that were adopted in 2020 and 2021, all the information on them was collected prior to the pandemic. So you can consider those, pre-pandemic informed plans. However, if you take a look at those plans, a lot of the recommendations from them are pretty applicable, pre, during, or post-pandemic. But we wanted to, make sure you were aware that the information was collected pre-pandemic, and there could be, new challenges that have emerged post-pandemic that we don't know about. So on the scale of the CBTPs, MTC puts out guidance each time around, and the guidance this time has some new elements. So they gave us the option this time of preparing a single countywide CBTP that would cover all of our EPCs, as opposed to how we did in the past, where we did, kind of separate plans for each location using separate consultants. So it was kind of, it was, it wasn't done through a single lens. It was done by, kind of through 3 or 4 working groups with, a couple of different consultants. So we think there could be some efficiencies gained by having a single consultant work on these plans, and have them, done in a similar, using a similar, say, template, but knowing that these are all different areas and require, different touch in each location. So the administration of the CBTPs, in the past, CCTA has always administered the CBTPs. We provide our staff and our consultants and the management for the plans. This time around, we can pass our funding through to local agencies and have them administer the CBTPs. I will note that in the past, local jurisdictions may or may not have the resources to manage this plan. And in the past, sometimes we haven't even had involvement from the local jurisdiction. It's kind of been like they give us the key to their meeting room, and we go, conduct our meetings in the local area, but really not using local staff or the local agencies as, to do any sort of administration. The outreach this time around, we've always involved CBOs, but in the past we couldn't compensate them for their involvement. This time around we could, say like in the Monument Corridor, we used Monument Impact, for, to their building to hold meetings. They invited their constituents. They helped us facilitate the meetings. In the past, we would be asking for their help, but we couldn't pay them. We would be bringing in the lunches and things like that. In this time around, they could be doing that kind of thing, and we could just reimburse them. And then the last question, this is more of a staff question that we can answer once we have more input on the top 4 questions. So I really won't ask for your input on that unless you think, there's something we need to know there. But I'd like to open it up to the room and get your feedback on any of those top 4 bullets. So, and if there's any questions I can answer on CBTPs in general, I'd be happy to do that as well.
Okay, thank you for that presentation, Matt. So I'll turn it to the committee members, and if they have any questions or comments, start on my left here. All right, Committee Member Simmons.
Hey, Matt, thank you. I was just wondering, since we had prior areas that we looked at before, was there like success criteria that was developed for those? And can we use that, the results from that, to go forward with these new areas to be more effective?
Yeah, so that was one of the, sorry, I forgot to mention some of the TCC comments from last week. One of their comments was that, is that perhaps for the areas that have been updated in the recent past, that we take the work done there and really, focus on what's been done since then. How can we refresh these plans without going through the full outreach extent to the community? And then focus on those new areas to really, dive in and have those community meetings and find out what the challenges are in these new areas. The TCC also asked for us to provide a summary of what's been completed, since those last plans? Have any of those recommendations actually been implemented? So, yeah, that was what one of their comments was, just really focus on those changes from 2021 on the areas that were updated then, and focus the outreach on the new areas. Would you ditto that comment, or
Yes.
okay, great.
Okay, Committee Member Riker.
Thanks for that presentation, and I would suggest going ahead and focusing on the new areas. As Mr. Olson pointed out, getting funding for projects is a lot easier when it's listed in any sort of plan. So yeah, the more new areas that can be focused on, I think, is the better. And in terms of the scale, it seems the efficiency of having the same consultants or team work on all the projects is helpful. Just, taking feedback that they may hear in Rodeo and then saying, oh, we heard this comment, it might also apply to Oakley. So not every team has to always reinvent the wheel. It's nice to have the same team working on the same kind of project.
Yeah, and thanks for mentioning the funding part, because I did mention REAP, and that is there to fund recommendations out of these plans, but also the county has been very successful over the last several years of applying for different grants and using projects, using the fact that they are in a CBTP, they've been able to get funding, by naming those projects in grant applications. So just being in this document, can set you up for funding from a variety of sources. So that is important.
Okay, any other questions, comments? I'll start with Committee Member Karimi.
Regarding the consultants again, you mentioned you kind of were in a bind between, just hiring one as opposed to just having the local communities administer it. So I have two questions. Number one, does CCTA not have like an existing project where they could just amend the existing contract and add the scope in there, assuming there's no scope creep? And secondly, if we do decide to pursue like a consultant, are there going to be like any KPI penalties to ensure we get everything we get, or is it going to be more open-ended than that?
So I think we've always used consultants to prepare the CBTPs in the past, and I think even if the city were the lead agency, they would still be using a consultant to prepare the plan. And we would probably be administering those contracts even if the city was going to lead the effort. There's federal funds, and usually cities don't want to take on those federal funds because of all the strings and complexities. So, and we're pretty well versed at that. So cities like us to take on those federal funds. And then as part of so we have an existing, what we call a bench of on-call consultants that we use. And so they're all under contract currently, and they all have, the equivalent of KPIs in their contract to make sure that everything is delivered on time and under budget.
Okay, so I want to make sure you had a bench and not
Yeah.
do a whole RFP and
No,
stuff. Okay,
no,
sure.
we would definitely be using our bench for whether it's one or two consultants on this. Thank you for that question, though.
All right, next, Committee Member Olson.
Yeah, thank you. If I could come down strongly on CCTA leading the planning process rather than pushing it on to the local communities, I think we would come out better overall with that. And could you repeat the amount of money that we have for projects for the whole county? Did I hear $450 million?
I wish you did.
450,000.
450,000 to prepare the plans. I don't have a total of, each plan has a different list of projects. So there is a total for the amount of projects listed in each one. The amount of funding available for those projects is kind of up in the air. That REAP REAP program has usually a few $1 million each year for funding, but like I said, there's other grants out there that can be applied for. But other than REAP, there is no dedicated funding for projects in the CBTPs. So the 450 you heard was just to update the plans themselves and identify all those projects that have, probably hundreds of millions of dollars in value.
Right, yeah, hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah, 450 probably is not far off.
Okay, okay, my error. Thank you very much.
Committee Member Dugan.
All right, thanks. So similar question, and that was just answered, so thanks for that. It was unclear to me. And so it kind of gets to the second bullet there. It always sounds nice. Let's do a countywide plan, but I think you lose. I think there's not enough money, maybe, and I would just throw out there that maybe each plan managed by CCTA, managing the planning process, then becomes consistent. There's no question on the value, the level of effort that went into each plan. They kind of they'll have the same value, I think, and that and capture the nuances of each area better. If you didn't do a countywide plan, at the same time you could do a countywide plan and really still focus on the areas that you need to focus on, and then maybe. So I really don't know, but what is the shelf life of a CBTP in your opinion?
They've been about 5 to 10 years, I would say.
Okay.
And Member Dugan, I will say that when we say countywide plan, it still would focus on the same areas, those EPCs, so we wouldn't be doing it for other areas outside of those EPCs, so want to make sure that was clear.
Yes, thank you, and I think I do understand that. I have a question though. When the first bullet says, do we focus on developing plans for the newly identified EPC areas, these are not just areas that plans were not created for that were EPCs before. Are these? We're seeing EPCs grow.
They grow and change depending on the demographics, yeah.
And okay, so but I guess in general, are we seeing them grow in general though? I mean, it feels like we're in that place in the economy, and it's worrisome.
Yeah, no, like the East County one started off as just Bay Point, and now it's all the way to Oakley.
Right.
So yeah, they definitely the geographies expand as as demographics change.
And while I still have the microphone, Chair, I will address the fourth bullet too. Is I've been involved in MTC's work on the Bay Trail gap closure implementation planning process involving CBOs and other plans that have involved CBOs, and they absolutely have to be, I think, are crucial to involvement. And almost every single planning process I've been involved in or that I've seen has compensated them some way, and I think that really helps.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, next I'll turn to Committee Member Weeks.
Hey, I thought I'd supplement what you said about the TCC. I serve on the TCC, and I think that might have been partially my comment or mostly partially my comment, but I think that there is a piece that fell off the description that I think was important. My proposal with the comment was basically to take the existing communities that had their planning completed and just update those plans with any kind of facilities that have been improved since then. So just kind of touch base with the plan and just say, 40 miles of bike lane have been completed in this area, this area, and this area, and they have 38 miles more to do. And then you're done with that piece, updating it with that. And then the new ones, especially the ones that are proximal to other ones. So I think the Rodeo one is that example. Do a little bit of work to acknowledge how those two can plug together. So if it isn't proximal to another one, you don't have to think about that piece. But if it's right next to it, then you need to update that existing plan with a place to plug in the new plan that you're doing for the new area that's proximal to it. that was an important piece that maybe I was jabbering on too long to get that onto the notes. But I think that's important because I think that then if you have two right next to each other and there's no acknowledgement of that proximal relationship, I think it would make it so you have to redo the plans in the future when they merge into one giant area, as you were just talking about earlier. And then second comment, I just wanted to mention that because of a lot of the changes in housing law, especially in low-income communities, we're going to have situations like we have in San Ramon now where we have a 427 apartment building planned that is basically the city can't give barely any input on because it's all affordable. So you're going to have a lot of developers coming into these communities building all affordable buildings, and they don't have to provide parking, they don't have to do any kind of mitigations, they're just going to build whatever they want. So I think that there might be a new thing coming along here with the new housing that happened after COVID that you might need to address, and so maybe it's either in some other project or just in the new ones. But if you build a large apartment complex with no parking, you're going to have an impact, and it's going to impact the roads around that facility. So just a heads up there. Thank you.
All right, next, committee member Moriarty.
Yeah, just one question about, people were bringing up the question about CCTA managing the planning process. That's just the planning process, and I guess once you have a plan, you have a whole list of projects. How involved is CCTA involved in implementing those projects? Is there some connection between the involvement in writing the plan and then helping the agencies carry out the projects? And then I think somebody else asked it before, but just a sense of, for past plans, ballpark, what percentage of the projects actually get implemented?
So that's a really good question. So, we get a whole variety of projects from, incomplete sidewalk, on Main Street, to, some of these, very large projects like transit expansions or bike ped bridges, things like that. So in general, the smaller projects are the responsibility of the local agency. And that's why we like to have local staff involved, because, like you said, part of the implementation of the plan doesn't all rest with CCTA, it rests with the locals. So making sure they've bought into the recommendations that are coming out of their plan is important. And CCTA tries to work with those cities to implement as many of those recommendations as possible. But usually it's when there's grant opportunities coming to them and saying, hey, it's Lifeline funding time. Let's get as many of your projects, funded through Lifeline as we can now REAP. And then CCTA at the same time is doing the same thing for the larger projects that we manage. So there are definitely different responsibilities in the plan, but that is all laid out in the plan, who's responsible for what projects. In terms of what's implemented, that's generally the first task we do when we get started, is seeing what's been done since the last one. And so I don't have that information for the 2021 plans. However, we did that for the late aughts plan, the ones we did in 2005 through 2009. And there were a large number of projects that had been implemented, or at least were underway. It's hard. I wish I could give you a list right now. I do have access to that, so it's something I could follow up with. But yeah, a fair number of the projects do get implemented over time. Maybe not in the first year or two after the plan, but usually starting about 4 or 5 years after the plan, you really start to see some of the projects, get some wind in their sails and start to be implemented.
All right, committee member Riley.
Thanks. I have a number of things. Yeah, it's funny. The Richmond CBTP in the mid-aughts 'cause when I first started working in West County, it's crazy to think that's 20 years ago. How do other counties do this?
Pretty much the same. The CTAs get the money from MTC and do individual plans.
Do they do individual plans for and have multiple subcontractors, or does the CMA take the lead and do a countywide plan?
Well, this is the first time we've had the option to do the countywide plan. It's the first time it showed up in MTC's guidance, so I'm not sure who's doing what this time around. I have a feeling most of the counties will probably, I don't know, I think some of them will probably switch to the countywide option. I think it was Chris who said this. It's probably correct to say that, having, people focused on individual areas might give you a better, flavor for that location. But that would be the goal of a countywide plan, to have whoever the consultant is to really, you're doing one plan, but it's got to have 4 flavors, it can't just be, a monoculture.
And I think that kind of goes into my next comments. I definitely see the benefits of gaining efficiencies with having that countywide plan, but I don't want to lose that close touch engagement, because, with the larger countywide plan, you will definitely pick up the things like the bike ped bridge that needs to get built, but you might miss the gap in the sidewalk in Main Street. And so it really is having those community meetings, really, touching and engaging with the people who live in those communities and move around those communities all the time. So I would hope that we would still be able to get that sort of deep engagement with the community members. But then hopefully with some of those efficiencies, be able to give some of that money to the CBOs that you're working with the partnership. Actually, I used to be an employee of Monument Impact, and I can say that we would have appreciated having that money come to us for various things of, doing the outreach and helping plan the meetings and all that stuff. So I definitely support being able to pay the CBOs in that. I think, too, that it might be worth seeing where, if we are going to focus on the newer areas, focus on maybe some of the older plans where things haven't been implemented as much, and also focus on and prioritize them and see why those areas are still sort of lacking in implementation. In places where you don't get good city participation, sorry about that, but then how are the transit agencies generally in this process?
Jackie might remember better, but I believe we definitely had transit agency involvement. I do remember that. I worked on the Richmond one. I know we had BART there and AC Transit there. The transit agencies have been, in general, more participatory than the cities.
Okay.
I'll just put it that way.
Well, I do hope that when this process goes underway, that you would work with the RTPCs and reach out with us, and then we can hopefully help with some of that wrangling and cat herding and sort of engagement and all that stuff too, of both the cities and the community as well. So.
Yeah, I think we'll probably use the RTPCs to really, once we have a work plan, to develop the stakeholder committees and working groups and things like that to inform the different plans.
Committee Member Dugan.
Follow up. What makes a plan for a certain area more expensive than another? Is it the size? Is it the complexity? And do you feel, there's enough money to do the work in these new areas and kind of follow up on the old, where are you at with funding and things like that?
Yeah, so last time around we did 4 separate plans, and they were each $125,000. So that, almost done for, almost matches the 450 we've got this time. We did actually need to use a little additional budget to collect some additional data in a couple of the subregions. I mean, generally, we budget the same amount for each plan, but like I said, about midway through the last plans, we had to do some data collection, I believe, related to the 2020 census or something like that. Yeah, so, you know, the budget will be, I think, will be just enough to get done what we're trying to get done this time. But there may be a need to amend that budget slightly.
All right, any other committee member questions or comments for Matt? Okay, Committee Member Byrne?
Yeah, I guess my question also follows along that same line. Has any thought been given to potentially looking at this from a low-income population perspective of how we distribute the money instead of doing equal split, especially if we have just a single consultant, where a lot of that can be carried over across multiple agencies, but when we get to the specifics and how much community outreach we want to do, has any thought been given to maybe prioritizing a larger population?
So, I mean, I kind of think I see where you're going. I mean, in terms of, you know, prioritizing the locations we do, if we're already looking at maybe the areas that, where there hasn't been as much implementation since last time, prioritize those, but also prioritize locations that have, so I mean, they're all identified as low-income areas, but would you say kind of, if there's just the total population is greater, apply some factors there, or?
So where we have these new areas
Yeah.
that haven't been looked at, I mean, are they more or less the same size, or would one need a little bit more outreach and engagement and a little more oomph on the back end?
The two new areas are smaller geographically than the areas we've worked in the past. So it may not require the same level of effort. But sometimes the geography doesn't always equate to the amount of effort.
All right, any other committee member questions or comments?
Sorry to drag this on. I know I think there's sandwiches over there. So each equity priority community, once it's identified as an equity priority community, it is equal with all the other equity priority communities, or are there levels within that category?
As far as we understand it, an EPC is an EPC, or a tract identified as an EPC tract is the same as any other. But we did receive a question from the TCC, you know, saying, are all these areas, you know, equally appropriate? Are there other areas we can consider? And I think that question was aimed at areas outside of the identified EPCs. So we are going to ask MTC that. However, I don't think they're going to let us go beyond the EPCs. And I think they probably will tell us that all EPCs should be treated equal, but I will add that to my list of questions.
Just a follow-up, yeah, because I think I see where you're going with this. And, you know, the definition of equity, right, is that the lower, the more, I guess I hate to say disadvantaged, but communities, you know, would receive more of an oomph. And I think it might be true that within that category, there are worse communities than others, and I put worse in air quotes as far as a disadvantaged. Again, I'm stuck in the old paradigm of the definition, but so not trying to make this more difficult. I think that this is capturing what you're supposed to capture. So I'm not trying to get in too far into the weeds, but it might be worth looking at if you're trying to prioritize.
I will definitely check with MTC on that.
All right, Committee Member Riker?
Yeah, so if you have 450 or 425 for planning, and my previous comment was you should spend it in the communities that haven't been served yet. But on the other hand, if you spent approximately the same amount several years ago and did 4 areas, it doesn't really seem equitable to spend $250,000 in just 2 communities. So I would amend my previous comment to say spend at least the same amount per new community that was spent previously, and then spend some of the money to do some of the things that people have recommended here in terms of follow-up. So I would just say being equitable is something to keep in mind.
Okay, any other final comments, questions for Matt? Okay, seeing none, I do want to open up to the public. Jackie, if you received any written or there's any virtual public comment?
No virtual or written.
All right, and seeing there's no other members of the public in the room here. Okay, Matt, thank you for that update on this item. The next agenda item is item 5C, which is other business and information sharing. And it's an opportunity for any members of the committee if they want to discuss any items or provide any updates. I'll turn it right here first, Committee Member Olson.
Yeah, we opened the bridge in Brentwood across Highway 4, the freeway. It was an EIR requirement that should have been built before the freeway was opened, but better late than never. Thanks very much to CCTA for leading the charge.
All right, thank you for that update. Committee Member Olson, any other comments? Committee Member Pinkham?
Yeah, and thanks to Ole and his many, many trips to many meetings, lobbying. A couple of small things happening in West County. I was just at the groundbreaking of a new system of bike lanes, et cetera, at Del Norte, Bart. It was a pretty good occasion. A lot of people attended. And part of that development will be a chunk of the San Pablo Avenue multimodal corridor. Granted, it's going to be a while before we get all the different sections, but it's always nice to see one. And the other thing I wanted to mention was there's this new group that I'm with, El Cerrito, Richmond Annex, Walk and Roll. But one of the main things we're working on is safe routes from BART to the Bay Trail. We're getting a lot of support from the city of El Cerrito, and we hope to be able to do the first leg of that, which is going to be from El Cerrito Plaza BART to the Bay Trail. There's a pretty dangerous way to get there now. And I'd really like to see this thing take off, and it might just happen. Maybe not only from BART, but city centers and so on, a safe route to the Bay Trail, because, hey, after all, one of these days, probably not when I'm still here, but we'll have that 500 miles of trail. That'll be just fantastic, world attraction. Recommend buying, for young people, recommend buying a B&B near the Bay Trail. Make a lot of money.
All right, any other comments? Committee Member Riley?
I just want to say, Bicycle Commuter of the Year nominations are open for 5 more days. So please, if you know someone that, I'm sorry, did I say Commuter Bicycle Champion of the Year? So if you know someone that embodies what it means to be a bicycle champion, please submit your nominations. We'll be reviewing those at the end of the month. And then Bike to Wherever Day is May 16th, if you don't already have that in your calendars.
Okay. Any other comments? Committee Member Reichert.
I just wanted to share some information about the e-bike rebate programs, I should say, which which we currently have two sources of funding for. We have our 511 Contra Costa e-bike program that's been going on since 2020, and that's continuing on as usual. The Charge Up Contra Costa e-bike rebate program, which has been providing $500 rebates for people with low income in our equity priority communities. There's good news and bad news. The good news is that we took away the restrictions of making this program only available to people who live in those equity priority communities. So that's available to any person with low income who lives in Contra Costa County can get $500 now. The bad news is the funding for that program is drying up quickly. So we only have maybe about enough funding for about between 20 and 30 more of those rebates. So if you know anybody who may qualify and is interested, that program's ending soon. So we'll go back to offering $300 rebates for people with low income once that's finished. Other news, 501 Contra Costa recently installed a couple of e-lockers at the Shadelands Business Center in Walnut Creek, which is nice. And we're also going to be funding new e-lockers at Los Medanos College in Pittsburgh and at DVC in Pleasant Hill. So that's hopefully, we're working with the district to get those funded and installed probably by summer. So that's some good news. Our Winter Walk Challenge just closed. Today was our final day of the Winter Walk Challenge, and we had more participants in that than ever before, and very high participation numbers. So people have been very happy with that program as well. And Corey, maybe you wanted to talk a little bit more about Bike to Work Day in terms of what the region is trying to promote on that.
So as the region, there's a couple things that we're trying to promote more. One is more involvement with schools, and so we're working with Contra Costa Health Department, at least in West County, to have Energizer stations at a number of the high schools. It's looking about half a dozen or so. And they're also promoting the, what is it called, the Ride with GPS. They wanted people, so they're trying to get 30,000 logged miles of people riding throughout the month of May. So it's the challenge. Getting me off guard. Bay Area Bike Challenge, that's it. So they're asking people to sign up for the Bay Area Bike Challenge and use their app to log 30,000 miles. And 30,000 is for the, in reference to this being the 30th anniversary of Bike to Wherever Day, Bike to Work Day, or whatever in the Bay Area.
I do have a question about that. I know in the past when they've had those challenges, there's kind of been also a group element where you can join a team. Do you kind of have an idea if it's going to be like individual or team or anything like that?
I believe it's more individual this year. It's not the same program as the one that had the team signups in the past. It's a new program. But it can be linked with stuff like Strava.
Okay, any other comments? Committee Member Dugan.
Sorry, did I jump in? No, okay. Last comment. This is interesting. So you mentioned Strava. So the Park District has been trying out a company called Placer AI, and there's many companies like this where they use cell phone data to track trips, and we're able to see where people came from and where they go to after they visit our parks, for instance. We're trying to get that onto at the trail level. And identify the corridor, and if it works, it's still kind of new to us, and I don't know if anybody else is familiar with this. We're subscribing to the data, but really starting to piece together the trip chains and where people are entering and exiting the trails, et cetera, and it's just really hard to do that with trail counters. And so I just wanted to mention that we're trying that out, and if anybody else has any advice or anecdotal, situations that they've had success with that or not, happy to talk offline.
So for Walnut Creek, Placer AI is new to me, but we use Strava Metro, and it's the free version for within an agency. And they're pretty good about setting routes, like if you have a destination and an origin, or you can kind of play around with it, and they'll give you the preferred route. One thing that, at least that we've come across, is who's actually logging the information. Is it school kids or is it the recreational riders? You have to be a Strava user, correct, yeah.
That's the difference with Placer. Thank you.
All right, any other questions, comments? Okay, we'll move on to item 5D, which is upcoming subjects for discussion. Do any of the committee members have any items they want to discuss at a future meeting? And also staff, we'll give you that option too. Staff or committee members, if you have any items to discuss at a future meeting.
Since I've been quiet, let's see. There's a lot going on, and I'll try to be brief. But in terms of upcoming items, I think one of the items coming up will be the Caltrans District 4 bike plan update, which this body had seen roughly a year ago or so, before it kind of kicked off in terms of something to be able to review. So this one, you'll have something substantive to review and provide comment on. And there's a Highway 4 visioning study that may be getting closer to the point where it might be appropriate to bring to this body to get input similar to the 680 CMCP that you heard today. Let's see. There's smart signals project that you have seen before that has been, in the midst of an enormous amount of effort in terms of design. But I think as we continue moving forward in the implementation of that project, that might be good to bring back to this group, in particular as it relates to bike count and the data side of things, and in terms of real-time operations and kind of helping to shape that piece of it in addition to transit priority and transit connectivity. It'll be good to get this group's input. The Countywide Transportation Safety Action Plan, CCT-SAP, that is SS4A compliance intended in terms of the, yet another acronym, at USDOT. So Safe Streets and Roads for All, SS4A, has a checklist for eligibility and competitiveness nationally that CCTA has been helping local agencies be able to check more boxes, so to speak, on being more, being eligible, period, and being more competitive nationally. And so there'll be a draft in the coming months that I'll be able to bring to this group to get some feedback on. And that includes potentially grant applications. And so huge bit of encouragement to local agency staff, if you can spread the word that some agencies have been more participatory than others, and I just want to make sure that some jurisdictions don't leave resources on the table, so to speak, and make sure that they avail themselves of the opportunity to have, we've already identified funding to help develop grant applications regardless of whether or not it gets submitted for this round of SS4A or another or a different program or color of money. in a future year. So definitely encourage local agencies to make sure that the consultants that are supporting CCTA are doing what you want them to be doing, and not leaving resources on the table. There's a bunch of other items, but I think one of the more near-term ones as well is the SS4A grant application that had won the $29 million in the first round, did commit to this body updating bylaws. So we'll be bringing the draft bylaws for this group's review in the coming months. And if anyone from local agency staff or otherwise want to chat offline about Vision Zero policies, the majority of our jurisdictions throughout Contra Costa do not yet have a formal Vision Zero policy to eliminate fatalities and severe injuries by any sort of date. And in order to be eligible and competitive nationally, that is a stated goal and policy of CCTA. So, encourage everyone to reach out so that we can collaborate on that. And I'll leave that there. And any comments and questions?
All right, any committee member questions or comments for Colin? All right, seeing none. All right, thank you for that update, Colin. And that moves us to our final item, item 6, which is adjournment.
Sorry,
Okay.
I thought that we were going to recommend some agenda items.
Okay, I'm sorry. Sorry for
Sorry,
jumping
go ahead.
ahead here.
No, it's okay.
So we'll go back to item 5D. All right, Committee Member Pinkham.
Yeah, I don't know whether we want to deal with this, but it's maybe sometime in the future. Some of the questions surrounding electric bikes. Of course, an obvious one is speed on the trails. And let me tell you, as a e-bike owner, it's real easy to get to and exceed the 15-mile-an-hour limit, including uphill. There may be other issues, the great proliferation at this point. I don't know, regulations, whatever. We might just kick around a few ideas about them sometime. No rush.
Okay, Committee Member Weeks. Thank you, Committee Member Pinkham. Committee Member Weeks.
Just had a few that we could throw on the table. Just to build on what I was talking about earlier, there's the potential for changes to be made on bike access on one of our local bridges, and I just wanted to throw in something here. I know one of the proposals that's been floating around or murmured about is that it would be bike access limited just to weekends, and it started to make me think about how I use that bridge as a cyclist, and I actually use it to go camping. And if there were, I can't really do that if I can only go on that bridge on Saturdays, so maybe there's a kind of a counter proposal here that we could develop as a bike committee that looks at maybe access on Fridays also, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. If we're really going to give that up, I don't know if we are, but if we really are, we should maybe look at a full weekend and maybe some discussions about cycling to camping in that area, because it actually is a wonderful place to camp. So, and biking is a great way to get there with that bridge. Second, cameras and enforcement. I wanted to mention a company that I've been talking to called Ultimate, spelled very strangely, ALTUMINT. And they have a trailer that has a speed camera on it that generates tickets, but the tickets are not real tickets where you have to pay money. That it accesses your DMV information and sends you a reminder that and a picture of you speeding in a certain area, and allows people to create kind of community-focused tickets that target their own communities. But it also has the person's name on it and some pictures of them. So it's a little step in intensity down from a regular ticketing camera system. They reached out to me as potentially using our SS4A funding for this. And I made it clear to them that we probably can't do that until we have our Vision Zero plan complete. But I think we'd be interested in looking into that technology, and it's kind of interesting, and how it could be used to protect bike lanes and protect the safety of pedestrians and cyclists would be interesting to explore in our area. Also for San Ramon, we have our couple things going on related to DoorDash Labs and other technology that uses bike infrastructure for robots to deliver items. And this goes along with the what committee member Pinkham was saying about e-bikes and those kinds of things. As we have more and more vehicles vying for access to our bike routes, it might be good for us to chime in on some of that. We've also had some proposals from companies like Sci-Fi to do micro-trenching in the bicycle facilities, and it'd be interesting to learn more about lessons learned from companies that have done this, and whether it really does impact the quality of the bike lane and the intersections and things like that. So there's a few things that you could chew on and see if there's maybe a technology element we could discuss. Just look at that, maybe bundle them together. Thank you.
All right, next, committee member Dugan. Oh, I'll go with Olson, and then committee member Dugan afterwards.
Okay, thanks. I'll be quick. Glideways for autonomous vehicles. The people who are designing this aren't bicyclists, and they think that bicyclists are not going to go in these exclusive glideways for these autonomous vehicles. But these autonomous vehicles are trained to not run over bicyclists. And as soon as the word gets out that these glideways are perfect areas to ride your bicycle in, it's going to totally screw up the autonomous vehicles going where they want to go. I'm just bringing that up and kind of grinning on the side. Thank you.
All right, committee member Dugan.
I sound like a broken record, Colin, but one thing I would love to hear about is a Measure J PBTF funding update and where we're at and when we might see another call for projects for that program. Some point. Was that already said? By me, like last year, yeah. I think every year I'm not saying you haven't given something that, just saying I think I sound like a broken record.
Yeah, no, we definitely want to periodically update you on that.
All right, any other items to propose for CCTA staff? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to item 6, which is adjournment. So this meeting is adjourned. The next regular meeting is proposed for May 20th, 2024 at 11 a.m. And I just looked at the calendar. That's, I guess, the third Monday in May, because the fourth Monday is Memorial Day. So, all right. Thank you all for your attendance today.
Recording stopped.